Hello and welcome to The Slam. This is Sports Tonight Live's weekly wrestling magazine show. My name is Jim Smallman. I'll be guiding you through it every week. And joining me in the studio this week, good friend of mine, known from the world of comedy, the wonderful Mr. Sam Pacelli.
Jim, thanks very much for having me.
No, this is quite all right. Thank you for coming along.
I'm really excited.
And doing the first one. I know you're a massive wrestling fan as myself. 3 quick questions I have to ask anyone who joins me in the studio. Question number 1, favourite wrestler of all time?
I thought you might ask me that. And I knew that I'd be controversial with my decision, because I thought, well, I'll look at actual wrestlers, but then my favourite all time, you might not like this.
Okay.
Probably Andy Kaufman, right? And it's controversial as hell.
So you've gone with someone who changed the world of wrestling.
And the world of comedy, Jim.
Yeah, well, it's almost like choosing Cyndi Lauper, isn't it?
Well, but not quite as pretty to look at.
No, and not quite as annoying. Favourite current wrestler?
I
know who you're not going to choose, because we were talking about this off air. So I definitely know who you're not going to choose.
Oh, we'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
I'm so pent up. There's so much anger. I'm a big fan of Sheamus. I'm a bit upset at the way he's being used at the moment. But as soon as he gets another push again, I wasn't sure about the face turn, but I really liked him as a heel. But yeah, no, I like him. I like Sheamus.
I think he's a very underrated worker as well. I think people a lot of the time don't appreciate how good a worker he is. And he was a brilliant worker when he was wrestling back in Ireland and back in Britain.
Yeah.
And I think he's been
he's just got a great look. He just looks like he would hurt someone and be really happy about it.
But the whole pale thing, I mean, the guy has to go out and wear Factor 150 sun cream all the time.
Yeah, bless him. The albino warrior. That's what I'm surprised I haven't called him that. I'd probably be a bit naughty. You probably couldn't. Probably not allowed. But I like him. Yeah, I like him a lot.
Finally, favourite match of all time. If you had to choose one match to sum up your love of wrestling, what would you choose?
I would go for the first TLC match at 2000 SummerSlam, I think it was. It was amazing. It was just the way it built up to it as well. With the kind of tables out of chairs, they were the weapons of choice for those teams. It was just a well built and well crafted storyline. And then the match itself was awesome. I mean, you look at it now and you think, well, it's all right, people getting put through tables and hit with chairs. But
at the time,
it was just at the time, it was awesome.
Tremendous. Now, we're going to have a chat about Raw this week, which we were saying before the show, one of the best Raws, I think,
it's good,
in recent memory. Joining us on the Skype wall is Rob McNichol, who is the chief wrestling writer for The Sun. Hello, Rob. How are you, mate?
Hi, guys. How's it going?
Yeah, good, thanks, mate. Now, we've been saying earlier on that we reckon Raw's been one of the best ones in recent memory this week. I mean, would you go along with that?
Yeah, I tweeted something very similar to that while I was watching the show. It was, I think we've had a few weeks where it's been, a bit in and out. I can see what they've been doing, but it's been nothing to write home about. But this week, I think it's the first time maybe that Vince has got his true WrestleMania gear on. Usually in January, we start to find that he's a bit more focused. The storylines start to come together in the build-up to the Rumble. And yeah, there were lots and lots of elements that I thought was fantastic about Raw. Not Perez Hilton. He wasn't one of them.
No, he was
awful.
And there were 1 or 2 other bits which were a little bit suspect, but generally on the whole, yeah, I really enjoyed it.
I mean, I think the thing about Perez Hilton is if you're going to take a bad bump in a WWE match, it may as well be a Divas match, because there's going to be a few anyway.
Yeah, he did stand out on that front. I think Kelly's been teaching him how to run the ropes and do back bumps, but there we go.
Now, the main issues I think we need to cover. I mean, the one thing I was really happy about watching Raw this week, as a well-known CM Punk fan, I absolutely love the guy, was the fact that finally they seem to be pushing his match with Dolph Ziggler at the Rumble to the forefront, rather than it being all about John Cena this week.
Yeah, that was good. I'm still a little bit concerned that it's about Punk and Laurinaitis and not Punk and Ziggler. But generally speaking, I thought it was Punk's best promo for a long time. I don't want to sound like I'm a detractor of his, because I'm not a big fan, but I do think that I'm not saying he was coasting for a lot of last year, but I do think that after his big thing that was leading up to Money in the Bank, I don't think we really saw the CM Punk we could have done and that we thought we were going to see, as potentially the biggest star in the industry. So I thought it was really, really pleasing to see him back showing what he can do on the mic this week. And I have to say, I think it was probably Laurinaitis' best performance so far. I know a lot of people have questioned him as the authority figure character, whether he's got the ability on the mic and frankly his acting. But I thought he really stepped up this week and did a good job. I think his little emotions at one point, he just sort of straightened his tie and looked at the crowd. And I think his little emotions are very, very good now. So I'm really pleased that Punk and his WWE title match are at the forefront, and I'm a big Dolph Ziggler fan. I think he's been the standout guy in the last 12 months or so. So I love the Rumble. It's my favourite pay-per-view, and to have a match like Punk versus Ziggler that's could potentially be as good as one we see all year. Yeah, I'm really excited for it.
I think as well, I think there was a couple of standout things, and I'm sure you'd agree with me, Sam. I think Ziggler's promo with Mick Foley at the beginning of the show was it felt to me, I don't know if you'd agree with me, Sam, but it felt to me like the point where Ziggler actually arrived as being able to construct a decent promo without Vicky.
Without Vicky, yeah. And I mean, she still had her input at the end a little bit, but it was it was really strong, I thought. And Punk and Foley worked really well together as well. That was really nice.
Yeah.
It was just strong. Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with everything about the Laurinaitis as well. Just looked. It was just more. It was more appealing. It was like his little twitches and stuff that you could see that he was getting angry. Although I did think it was slightly odd that he said at the end that of course he was going to screw Punk. I thought that was a bit strange. I don't know what you guys thought about it.
No, I think it's strange to have the honesty when we're so used to. I suppose it is. I think Rob, you'd know this as well as anybody else, that it is an echo of the whole Vince McMahon, Steve Austin storyline from about 10 years ago, isn't it?
I think that's what they're going with, and I still think that there's a part of it that I think Vince would prefer that to be Shane rather than Johnny Ace. I'm not sure Johnny Ace might have been the first man to be positioned in that role had Vince had all his cards in his deck, but I think it's very much playing off that. I'll be honest, over the last 10 or 15 years, I've grown a little tired of the heel authority figure. Some have done it very well. Eric Bischoff did it for a while very well on Raw. But on the whole, I'm a little bit sick of it. So that is a bit of a detraction for me because I feel like we've seen this all before. But if there is anything you want to try and emulate, then let's face it, do Vince versus Austin because it's probably the biggest money-drawing feud of all time.
Absolutely.
So, you can't really knock them for that.
Now, one thing that I'm genuinely excited about and shouldn't be, speaking as someone who has always gone about, I don't like silly characters and stuff like that. Brodus Clay is ridiculously entertaining and shouldn't be. I mean, have you been impressed by the way he's re-debuted? Because I genuinely wasn't expecting much from it. When they kept delaying it all the time, I was expecting nothing from it whatsoever. And then he's come back, and I've been really impressed with him.
Yeah, I'll admit that the jury was certainly out after the first week. After having seen him twice now, he's starting to win me round. When I first saw him come out as that character, with Ernest the Cat Miller's old music and playing a bit of a combination of him and Rikishi and Flash Funk and Dusty Rhodes and all these other characters that have done a similar sort of thing, I wasn't too happy about it because I think Brodus has got the look that he could be a really strong monster heel and a real top draw if they push him in the right manner. So to have him come out as a bit of a dancing fool, to be honest, was not really my idea of a good way of re-debuting him. But what I love most about his act, if you can call it that, is that he looks like he's having a whale of a time.
Yeah,
and I don't think enough people.
That's it. Yeah,
I don't think enough people in wrestling look like they're enjoying themselves sometimes, and it helps the fans. Obviously, it's reminiscent of Too Cool and Rikishi and so forth. And I think people liked the act because it was just a lot of fun, and they could dance, and they could just join in with them, and that's probably going to be his key. I think all I'd say is that long term, how difficult is it going to be for him to step up if they really want him at the top level? Yeah. Are they going to be able to do it after he's been doing the Funkasaurus gimmick? But that remains to be seen.
I think that your point about Dusty Rhodes being similar, that's one of the things I tweeted about the other night, was I genuinely saw echoes with Dusty Rhodes, not just in his WWE days, but also in his NWA days from the early 80s. That whole kind of seemed to be enjoying himself. That air of it did sort of shine through. And we've been talking about it before the show, Sam. And
yeah, what I quite like about it is it feels like it adds a little bit of legitimacy to fun characters. Like, because a lot of the comedy roles, like Santino and stuff, he wrestles and it's just a laugh and it's never actually going to be, for any titles or anything. Whereas with this new gimmick, it does feel like, because of the previous, vignettes and stuff, which did make him look like a monster, it feels like it could be legitimate and he could go on a title run as this crazy character and people would still take him seriously as a comedy character, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Rob, before we let you go, quickly, Chris Jericho. I love what they're doing with him at the minute. I mean, are you a fan or not?
I'm trying to make sure that I don't commit too hard one way or another on this. Now, I know that sounds like a big, sit on the fence from my perspective.
It's a massive politician answer, my friend.
It is a little bit, isn't it? But and it's not at the risk of wanting to be embarrassed if I say it's great and it turns out to be terrible. But my big theory is that in the last few years there have been a lot of good, what I would call chapter ones. You know, the first time that Brett came back and, you know, his emotional hug with Shawn and his, you know, interaction with Vince, and we thought, wow, this could be amazing. And I think by the time it got to Mania, we were all kind of sick of it, and the match wasn't very good. Even Punk and Cena was a great build to Money in the Bank, but it kind of faded away a little bit. So what I'm going to do is kind of take a step back from this, and rather than go crazy about the first couple of weeks, I'm more worried about where the end product goes. And I'll put my faith in Chris Jericho, whose track record is excellent. I still think his feud angle, if you want, with Shawn Michaels a few years ago was probably the best thing I've ever seen in terms of
tremendous.
In a modern day era to try and do something like that. So my faith is in Jericho that something good will come of this. I like that it's different. I like the fact that I don't know where it's going. I like the fact that every week I want to tune in and go, I wonder what he's going to do now. I think that's great. I've certainly not seen anything massively negative about it so far. I know a lot of people are looking for kind of instant gratification, and they're upset that there wasn't a bigger deal after those 6 or 7 weeks of vignettes, you know, the It Begins stuff. But I'm going to go with the idea that if in 3 months' time we've been entertained, he's had great matches, you know, he's had good promos when he finally starts talking, and we've had some fun with it, that's cool by me. So I'm happy with the first few steps. I just hope that the end game is the correct one.
Yeah, I think Rob as well. I think it's the first time I think the WWE have actually addressed the fact that a guy's come back, not having been around for a little while. He's obviously going to get cheered, but they want him to be a heel. And I think it's the first time I've seen them actively address it in such a way.
Yeah, and I think it's a send-up as much as anything. I can remember Triple H being the nastiest heel that's ever been in the business, you know, and then he tore his quad, came back 9 months later, won the Rumble, and was this huge babyface. And it didn't seem to make any sense. It was just because people actually get used to booing a cat. People like to boo Jericho. You know, he was very successful at being that heel in, you know, in his last role. But secretly, everyone loved him, and we knew that he was a good performer. So going away, we're all going, yeah, we're really happy to see Chris back. But you know, I think he's sending up this idea that everyone comes back and goes, hooray, and points to the crowd and plays up to them and cries and gets emotional. And I think it's a send-up of babyfaces, and it could be Triple H or Hulk Hogan or various other babyfaces, and he's just sending them up. And I think at some point he's going to snap, and we're going to see that moment where he does turn or he does change his image. But I'm just going to enjoy the ride until then.
Absolutely. Now, Rob, if people want to follow you on Twitter, what's your Twitter handle, my friend?
It's very simply my name. I'm lucky enough to there's no other famous Rob McNichol, so I'm just Rob McNichol on Twitter. And you can also follow Sun Wrestling as well. Excellent stuff. Thank you very much, Rob. Appreciate speaking to you. No worries. Take it. Thank you very much. That's Rob McNichol, the chief wrestling writer from the Sun newspaper. One quick thing, Sam, I want to talk about regarding the WWE this week is Kane. Now, right. Back in the day, there was a point when I stopped liking wrestling in my teens, and then I came back to it when I was about 20. And the point where I stopped liking it was the point where they went, The Undertaker, we're not entirely sure if he's living or dead. Now, and they actually said, Vince said that on commentary, and I remember hating it at the time, and hating the sort of the whole Hogan superhero sort of thing. Now, with Kane now, that whole dragging Zack Ryder to hell and stuff like that, is it something that you really buy into?
Not really, no. Like the idea of dragging someone into hell happens to be underneath a ring that they only put there that night. It's a bit ridiculous, isn't it? Yeah. I understand, you know, trying to keep kids involved and maybe slightly frightened and stuff, and that's lovely. You know, that is a massive part of wrestling entertainment, as it were, is to keep younger ones happy. But it does seem a bit odd. Like I like alluding to kind of supernatural stuff. I think that's fun, and you know, I think there's a distinct lack of entertaining gimmicks outside of I'm a bad wrestler, I'm a good wrestler. But it's a bit ridiculous, it's a bit over the top. Actually, I quite like the stuff where Kane was kind of stalking Zack Ryder without him really knowing about it. He was just hiding behind doors. I found that really funny.
It was very Abbott and Costello, wasn't it? it was very strange.
Well, rather than being frightening, I found it quite funny. Yeah. But maybe kids would find it frightening. I don't know.
Now, we're going to speak in the second part of the show. We are going to speak about TNA. We're also going to find out a bit about Preston City Wrestling as well. We'll be chatting to Rob Leigh, who works for The Mirror. They're wrestling journalists there. But that'll all be coming in the second part of the show. We'll be back in a couple of minutes. Thank you very much. Hello, welcome back to the Slam on Sports Tonight Live. I am Jim Smallman. With me is Sam Pacelli, my guest today. In a little while, we're going to be speaking to Rob Leigh, who is the wrestling journalist for the Daily Mirror. We're going to be chatting to him about Impact Wrestling. Now, if you have no idea what Impact Wrestling is all about, they're over here taping some TV over the course of the next couple of weeks. So if you'd like to know a little bit more about it, then watch this here video.
It's time for our Genesis World Heavyweight Championship Showdown. Will 2012 be the year of Jeff Hardy or Bobby Roode? Roode in the ropes, trying to use the leverage for the pin, and the referee saw it. Again, Roode says enough is enough.
Wanting to get out of Dodge here. kept trying to leave and trying to get disqualified. I mean, on purpose.
The desperation mode of Bobby Roode kicking the referee. I will do whatever it takes to stay the World Heavyweight Champion. At Genesis, you kick the referee to get disqualified for the world title. To retain the world title, you defend world title tonight against Jeff Hardy. Hardy gets another opportunity, but if Roode intentionally gets disqualified,
well, basically that world heavyweight title is going to go right in the hands of the charismatic Enigma.
I got you back, but you're going to owe me a favor, and I get a shot.
Yeah. You get a shot, of course. You kidding me?
what the hell?
Well, now what? What's going on?
Referee's out. Who's going to make a decision here? Fully raised interference. One thing we know, it cost Jeff Hardy the World Heavyweight title.
And that is Impact Wrestling over here, taping over the course of the next couple of weeks. Now, if you've not seen it before, I've been to see a couple of live shows of Impact Wrestling. Have you ever seen it before?
No, never.
Sam?
No.
And obviously, it used to be known as TNA, the artist formerly known as TNA. And a lot of the big stars are coming over for it. Now, I've been to see their shows in the past, and they've just been doing house shows, whereas this time around, they're actually going to be taping television. Now, someone who can let us know a little bit about what's going on, major angles in Impact Wrestling at the moment, is Rob Leigh, the wrestling journalist for the Daily Mirror. Hello, Rob. How are you, mate?
Hello, Jim. I'm very well. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, mate. Good, thank you. Nice to speak to you. Now, Impact Wrestling, I mean, I'll be honest in saying that I don't keep up with Impact as much as I do WWE. Now, I know it's on Challenge TV, 9 o'clock on Sunday nights, if people want to tune in and watch it. But if people want to catch up on basically what's going on at the minute, what are the major angles that are kicking off for people who are perhaps going along to the TV tapings?
Well, the biggest angle about TNA coming over, TNA Impact Wrestling coming over, is it's the first time that Sting has been in Britain for over 10 years. And announced in the last week, the immortal, the one and only Hulk Hogan is coming back. And it's the first time he's going to be back on these shores since 1994. So what, 18 years? So never mind the other angles. We've got Sting and a Hulk Hogan coming back. And for anyone of a certain age, that's going to occupy everything, surely.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to say, when Hulk Hogan was last over in 1994, I think I went along to watch it as a 15-year-old lad. Wow. So it is. I mean, it's a massive big deal. I mean, how's it going to affect? Because I've been to the house shows before. When the company was still called TNA, I went to a couple of house shows, and they were fantastic. The wrestling was brilliant. Most of the matches went 15, 20 minutes. Is it going to be different because it's a TV taping? Because obviously normally they tape their shows in the Impact Zone at the Universal Studios in Orlando. Do you think it's going to create a different vibe during the tapings for any fans who've bought tickets?
It'll be a completely different vibe. I mean, like you say, they film in Florida, but they very rarely go outside of those studios. So the wrestlers are used to the same kind of atmosphere. Going last year when at Wembley, it was a sold-out 10,000 crowd. The wrestlers aren't used to performing in front of that kind of crowd, and it's the first time and it's the only tapings at Wembley, by the way. It won't be at Nottingham or Manchester, but they'll have great house shows as well. But it's the first TV taping outside of the US, and they're going to go absolutely crazy. Last year was headlined by Doug Williams versus Ric Flair, and the crowd reaction was amazing. You know, on a par, if not more, at times than WWE when they travel over here. And the TNA Impact Wrestling is a very different experience in the UK. I mean, of course, we all still love WWE and whenever it tours, but that company is used to moving around all the time. When TNA come over, they do different kind of things. And the way they interact with the fans as well, it's not just another taping.
No, I'm going to say I went to a meet and greet a couple of years ago when they came over, and I've been to see it in London. I've been to see it in Coventry as well when they were sort of in their embryonic stages of touring. And I've got to be honest with you, I mean, they did seem to, the whole atmosphere did seem to be trying to give as much back to the British fans as possible, because the British fans were really, really up for it. And I suppose if you had to draw a line between the fans who watch WWE and the fans who go and watch Impact, it did feel like it was more people like myself and Sam here in the studio, people who are a bit more wrestling nerdish than perhaps the WWE. There doesn't seem to be any part-time fans who watch Impact, does there?
There's no part-time fans because, you know, for the past year, I mean, it's all very complicated with, you know, Sky's audience figures and Challenge and what's available where. But Challenge has been doing bigger numbers than any WWE programming in the UK. Now, of course, TNA quite rightly trumpet that a lot, and they look to capitalise on that. That's why they do these UK fan parties they've been to. They've been to London. They've done one in London, which I went to. I think they went to Glasgow. I think they've done one. They did one in Birmingham recently. I can't remember exactly. But and that's aided by Jeremy Borash, who's a huge, well, let's say he's an Anglophile. He certainly loves certain kinds of English people. And what else? And Magnus comes, Nick Aldis comes back a lot, and they really interact, and they Skype with Jeff Jarrett and Karen Jarrett and Bobby Roode, and it's not just a set of pre-tape promos. Like, they're not to criticise WWE, but it's slightly outside of the usual mould.
No, I mean, Sam, speaking of someone, we were talking about this before the show, and you're not someone who's, you know, massively familiar with Impact.
Like, I used to watch a little bit. I found the gimmick of having a six-sided ring really interesting. I don't know why. It was fascinating to me. For some reason, it felt like there were faster-paced matches because of this six-sided ring. But it's interesting you say about there only being, there not being any part-time viewers. I find that really interesting, because does that mean that the product can't sustain people who wouldn't mind dipping in and out? Is it not interesting enough? Is it? I mean, I don't really know why that would be.
I don't know. When I was a kid, we didn't have Sky in my house. You know, poor people from Wolverhampton didn't have Sky, so I was forced to watch WCW on a Saturday afternoon.
Likewise.
But I was a WWE fan first and foremost. And I've been a wrestling geek for, you know, since 1992 now. What I found after the boom in the late 90s, when all my schoolmates got involved as well, and they've all drifted away, the people who are coming back and watching wrestling now, and these are MMA fans as well, so there's a crossover there, are watching TNA rather than WWE. Now, I don't think that's just because of the PG guidance thing. I think it's partly a nostalgia thing with all the recognisable acts like Hogan and Sting and what have you. But what they really enjoy is those X Division matches. And, you know, a really underrated character, if you're not familiar with him from ROH or any Dragon Gate USA or any of those other promotions, is Austin Aries. And he's my tip for 2012. If he can just compete with some people outside of the X Division, he could. To me, he's like Rick Rude, but an even better worker.
No, he's a tremendous worker. I mean, some of his Ring of Honor matches are probably my favourites of all time. I think that's a cracking shout, Rob. We will keep our eyes on Austin Aries, and hopefully we'll speak to you again soon. What's your Twitter handle if people want to follow you on Twitter, my friend?
Well, it's Robbie_Dazzler, but I've just kicked off a new wrestling Twitter called Robbie Wrestles. It's a terrible name, I know, but. But follow me there, and let's talk some wrestling stuff.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Rob. Cheers, mate.
Jim.
That is Rob Leigh, who works for the Daily Mirror. He is their wrestling journalist there. And I think he's got a lot of interesting things to say about Impact Wrestling in particular. And I do. There's a big part of me that wants to tune in and wants to like it. Well, that's it.
Like, and it is these faster-paced matches. The fact that they let matches run out a little bit longer, and it's not just for the kids, as it were. Like. No. But it does frustrate me sometimes when I have tuned in, and as he said, there aren't any part-time people, and I think I've tried to whack in there as a part-timer, and it doesn't look like that's possible at all.
Now, one thing we're doing here, obviously we've highlighted Impact Wrestling to Sam, who's not that familiar with the product recently. Hopefully we highlighted it to you as well. But another thing we want to do here on the Slam is we want to highlight British wrestling promotions. If you know of one, maybe you work for one and you want to highlight the product here, then please feel free to get in touch. Sports Tonight TV is our Twitter handle if you want to get in touch with us there. Now, one thing we want to point out this week, the first wrestling promotion that has got in touch with us is Preston City Wrestling. Preston, of course, home of Wade Barrett, very famously now got a Manic Street Preachers themed tattoo on his arm as well, with the official emblem of Preston on. But Preston City Wrestling have sent us a bit of a highlight reel. So if you want to know what Preston City Wrestling is all about, then watch this video. That is Preston City Wrestling, my friends. That looked brilliant.
That was
from
awesome.
That
I'm definitely going.
Not just because they seem to have the greatest ceiling in the
like
history of wrestling arenas. It was tremendous. If you want to follow them on Twitter, it's at PCW_UK, at PCW_UK. And I believe they've got the first British Wrestling Blu-ray out this month. So if you want to check them out, then please do. One quick feature we're going to do every week is Jobber of the Week. Nice. Now this week we have chosen the quintessential jobber. There he is up on the wall there. Steve Lombardi, the Brooklyn Brawler. Any particular memories that you've got of him, Sam?
Wasn't he Doink at one point?
He was Doink at one point. He's played every single role in the WWE. If you've got a jobber of the week you want to suggest to us, then you can tweet me. Get in touch at Jim Smallman on Twitter. Another thing I want you to do every week is get in touch with our question of the week. This week's question, who do you think is going to win the Royal Rumble? Next week's show will be pretty much our Royal Rumble preview. I know who I'm going with. I'm going with Chris Jericho. Quick one name answer. Who are you going with, Sam?
Oh, I want to say Wade Barrett. I'm going for it.
You're going for Wade Barrett?
Yeah,
That's just because you've just watched a video about Preston.
Yeah, exactly.
Isn't it?
I'm pushing the Preston guys.
Excellent stuff. Thank you very much, Sam, for getting in touch. If you want to see Sam doing stand-up, you're part of the Noise Next Door, aren't you?
I am, yes, yeah.
So it's at the Noise Next Door.
At Noise Next Door.
At Noise Next Door on Twitter. Do follow those guys. They are absolutely fantastic. And like I say, follow me on Twitter, at Jim Smallman. Get in touch. Do tune in to the Slam next week as well, where we'll be talking pretty much a lot about the Royal Rumble. And if you are a member of a British wrestling promotion, get in touch as well. Send us your videos and we will showcase them here on the Slam every week here on Sports Tonight Live. That's pretty much been it. Thank you very much, Sam, for joining us today.
No worries, pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And do join us again next week. Thanks a lot, guys. Cheers.